This time.
You're on.
Hello, everybody. We're live. Welcome to Mile High Recovery Chat.
Every week,
I
every
know.
week.
I'm Bryce
And I'm Lindsay.
and
And
Sarah.
we've got
Sarah.
Sarah.
Yay!
Sarah. Oh, yeah, I'm here too.
Right. So, all right. Our guest tonight is Sasha Alex Raskin, and I'm gonna have Sarah. You go ahead and introduce her, like how you know her and how you heard of her, and then we'll bring her on.
Awesome. Sasha and I are virtual friends, and I really got to know her a little better through a Facebook group called A Beautiful Mess. And it's really just a group that drew me to it right away because it's a group of people who come together and they are real people. It's a sharing of like common pain, common joy, and a lot of like minds. And Sasha as the oh my god, my watch is talking to me right now. Sorry
It's
guys.
okay.
Oh, how embarrassing.
Oh, my God.
And he's British too, so we'll talk about that later another time. But
Let's do that for sure.
Yeah. So what's really cool about Sasha and what I've noticed from our virtual friendship and watching this group grow is that she has like a really large charismatic presence that just brings people together in a way that facilitates healing and like really into the mental wellness piece and really supportive of anyone where they're at. And so I thought that we should bring her on and hear some of that message of hope because we are the hope dealers.
Yes.
And it's just really an awesome story. And I'd love for her to share more about some of the cool things that have come out of this project of hers, which I'm sure she'll get to when she's on. But there's just some folks you meet in your life and you're like, that person is changing the world. Like, it's not often that you meet someone who's like, let's embrace what messes we are and freaking grow from that. But she does. So,
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's bring her on. Hi, Sasha.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good. How are you? You're in New York, right?
I sure am, yeah.
Right on. So, tell us about A Beautiful Mess.
Yeah, it's a mental health organization I started actually right before COVID. And yeah, it gets the name A Beautiful Mess because I just believe the most beautiful things about us are being our full, honest selves, and that includes being a total mess sometimes. So yeah, and I just started it for really personal reasons because I struggled with really severe suicidal depression for most of my life, and it culminated where a few years back I checked myself into a mental hospital, and I thought that no one would want to be my friend or date me or love me, and I thought I needed to keep it a secret if I wanted to have a normal life. And that the moment I thought that is simultaneously the moment I decided I would tell everyone because I dreaded the idea of living a life of secrecy and shame. So yeah, in the hospital, I wrote a note to a bunch of people, and then going forward, started telling everyone, like parties, first dates. And so many people ended up having similar stories. And I thought, this is nuts. We've built a world where everyone is scared to be honest in themselves. And so yeah, I started my organization because I was like, fuck that. Am I allowed to say that? Sorry, I cuss a lot.
You're okay.
You do it. You're a beautiful mess. You can do whatever you want.
that's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love everything you've shared because I think as like we're in the recovery community, and I'll speak for myself, like for me, like coming out of active alcohol and drug addiction, the first thing that like I needed to do was to not be ashamed of that part of me. Uh-oh.
I lost the sound, guys. I'm so sorry.
You can't hear us?
We can hear you though.
We can hear you. Oh no. Well, I was just sharing, I think for like a lot of us that are like a part of the recovery community, like being open about like our addictions and not being silenced or like ashamed of that part is a lot of, like why we have this show is to like end the stigma. And I think there's such a healthy movement towards like when we think about the mental health aspect and people that maybe the addiction side is not, you know, something that is where they struggle, but like mental health and depression and anxiety and, you know, like suicidal thoughts. I applaud her for just the bravery of, you know, speaking about that openly and without any shame.
I am
Hi,
so
Sasha. Can you
sorry.
hear us? It's okay. Can you hear us now?
I can hear you and I can see you again. I'm so sorry.
Okay. To Lindsay's point, and I'm sure that Sarah will corroborate this, is that, you know, in substance use disorder, I don't think there's anyone with a substance use disorder who doesn't have a co-occurring mental health disorder, whether even just like at a minimum, like depression or anxiety, right?
Hmm. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I've often said that I'm surprised that I haven't had that as a co-occurrence as well, just because most of my life I've dealt with so much self-hatred and self-loathing, and was so defeating. This is a bit, I don't know, this is hard to share, but I remember I was engaged to somebody that I was with for 10 years, and he was in recovery, he was in AA. And I remember I used to cry and tell him that I wish that I had an addiction or something that would make sense why I was so like messed up. And I also used to tell him that I actually kind of used to get jealous of the AA community, and I thought, you know, I wish that quote unquote normal people, when I say normal, I mean just people without addictions, which obviously it's not normal. Addictions are also very normal, but I just meant that I think being a human, no matter what you're going through, is hard. And I just wanted a space for all of us to be able to go and share. So that's actually a long-term goal of mine, is to create community centers. Because I think it's crazy that we have like suicide hotlines, but we don't have real life lifelines. Like places where, you know, you can go and just be with your fellow man and share in what it means to be alive and struggling.
And it's such a good point, like normalizing the need for social human interaction and how big of a part that plays. You know, even in your story where you're like, I wasn't going to tell anybody, this was going to be my secret. And then I wish there was a place for me to go. Like, as a recovering person myself, many of these years, I'm like, God, I wish I wasn't so messed up. Like, I wish I could blame that on the alcohol, but now I'm in recovery. I have nothing to blame my mess up on.
Yeah.
But it's that same thing. Like, where do people go to get that community support for suicidality, for severe anxiety, for this stuff that's like, I don't belong in a hospital, but I also need help outside of like my weekly therapy, outside of like medication management. And I see that too. That's like a huge missing piece in the recovery from mental illness, is if we continue to stigmatize it so much, then how are we going to get that connection?
Oh yeah. I mean, part of what I talk about is I actually don't think that the initial problem is the real major problem. Like the fact that I've had depression and anxiety and been suicidal, I think that in and of itself actually would have been okay if, um, to me, what happens is you have an initial problem like that, right? And then you feel very ashamed, you feel very kind of disgusted, you feel very just bad about yourself. And if you summon the courage to share it with the outside world, you know, most of the responses that I got were so awful, were so inhumane, were so, you know, like they magnified all of my issues so much more. You know, people would make, you know, just be grateful, just be like all the toxic positivity culture. And at that point, I started being so scared of other people and sharing what was really going on. And that's when these things really exploded, because I felt like I had no one to turn to, and the problem must be me, and I must be, you know, the one that is wrong and bad. And I actually felt the need to protect others from myself. And so you get, you have this initial depression, but what happens is that this idea is reinforced, you're wrong or bad, so you self-isolate, and then the depression, anxiety, all these issues, they spiral out of control at that point because you don't have community and you don't have support. I have actually been trying to, I've taken a few years off of therapy, and now I'm starting back up again, and I'm in a really good place, and asking me why, what I do. Hope in a lot now. I have to go and to share and these things that are going on with me. I don't feel like they're my own burden, and I'm part of a organization. I can't make a difference. Talk about therapy. That, but I was when I was suicidal, like, let's say you're super, super rich, somehow you can afford to do therapy 7 days a week. That's still 1 hour of a 23-hour day, or 24 hours,
Right.
23 hours left. Like, that you're alone dealing with, this thing that's trying to fuck you over. You just can't do that. You need a community. You need people. You need support. And I think that's why we see the U.S. such a that our whole country is in such a fucking time, because people can't rely on one another. We feel so isolated. We feel so, and as a result, we're so angry and wounded, but we don't understand that that's what's going on. So we're just mad all the time, and it has nowhere to go. A lot of it's just a cry for help. It's just, I'm sorry I feel like I'm kind of giving a soliloquy, but if I can make one final point on this, part of my workshops in my organization, I had somebody on who, he was a former white supremacist, and now he's actually an activist for BIPOC communities, so people of color. And I asked him, because I asked him how he started in it, and he did not grow up in a white supremacist home. He did not grow up in a racist home. He did not grow up with any of that kind of mentality. And I was like, how does somebody like you get so radicalized? And he said, I was lonely. I was bullied. I grew up and I didn't have friends. Kids made fun of me. And I was really angry. And I found a community that was angry, and they took me in. And so here you had a guy who he wasn't accepted anywhere else. So if the only place that accepted him was a bunch of KKK white supremacists, that's where he was going to go, because that's where he felt the closest to love. To me, that just broke me. It breaks my heart that we give people no choice, and they're ostracized, and of course they're gonna find whoever will accept them.
Yeah, and I think we see that so often with like gang members and other folks who fall into, some really violent or racist communities, is that we are literally looking for that human connection so much that we forgo the rest of the stuff. Apparently she didn't like what I was sharing. So.
She's obviously having
She's-
connection issues.
So it's not personal. It's not about me, Sasha.
It's not,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, that's fine. Even if it were, it would be okay too. But I think it's, such good points. Is it all comes back to, it's not about that initial problem. It's not about the depression, the anxiety, the bipolar, the drug and alcohol problems. It's really about like a community problem. And, people are like, what's American culture? Well, American culture is individualism, and it's the lack of connection to other people. And when we think about it like that, it completely makes sense why we have insanely high suicide completion rates, insane amounts of drug overdoses, and the amount of like poverty and homelessness and all this stuff because of COVID has tripled. And if we were community connected and community oriented, we wouldn't be seeing these problems. And it's so apparent, and it's so important that there's people like you out doing the work, bring a change about, you know, hearing a story of like somebody who was KKK supporting and is now an activist for a wide variety of oppressed people is amazing.
Yeah,
You know,
it really
Yeah.
is.
You know,
I
I think there's just like a lack of authenticity in our culture. So when you're struggling, you know, and if you wake up, I mean, just scroll through Instagram for like 10 minutes. And if you didn't feel bad before, you'll feel bad after that. Because everybody's kind of, you know, it's so phony in a way. And it's like, if you already feel bad, who do you reach out to? I know a guy that started after Anthony Bourdain completed suicide, and he's a chef, and he started this group. He didn't have anybody in the group. He put an ad out saying, people in the restaurant industry, if you want to come talk about this, come talk about it. And 30 people showed up from different restaurants in Denver, and one woman said, I was going to kill myself, and you guys saved my life. So I think it's like when someone like you stands up and says, all right, I'm struggling, a lot of people will go, oh, thank God, I'm struggling too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy because I sort of said this and people act like I'm some kind of like messiah sometimes. They're like, wow, that's so brave and amazing and you transform this space and blah blah blah. And it's like, you know, I'm not anointed by God to like share my story. It's like anyone has the power to do this and change a room that they're in. It just takes that one person to be the first one, you know? It's like, and as soon as you are, it's like I the way I would almost describe it, it's like I feel like every room I walk into is a room of boiling kettles, and I'm the first kettle to kind of pop, and then everyone's like, "Oh, I can too." And that's kind of what's happening is people are just they're at their brim and they're just waiting to be seen. They're waiting for that smallest chance to be heard, and they want it. They're craving it so bad. It's this really interesting irony where, you know, what people want more than anything and crave is human connection, but as a result of how much trauma and how many horrible experiences we have with other humans, especially ones that we've trusted, it also becomes the thing that we're most afraid of. And so you have all these people. I used to, before COVID, I made shirts that said free hugs and I would walk around and give hugs, and I would often have, you know, grown men just sobbing in my arms. But the funny thing about it was that before they would stop, often almost everyone, I live in New York City, they would look at me like I was just filth and garbage. You know, they would kind of run. And so sometimes they would kind of circle back and I would talk to them like, what gave, you know, why did you walk by the first time? What got you to come out? And everyone was just like, well, I thought you were going to want something from me. I thought you were like full shit. I thought you were selling some, you know,
It's New
every,
York City.
exactly.
nothing is free, especially hugs. Come on.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Everyone's wondering like what's the catch, you know, what's this person really up to? Our trust in one another is so low and we just expect to be screwed over. That's really where we're at, and it's it's just, yeah, it's deeply sad. I used to think that something was wrong with me because, you know, I did have depression and all these issues, but now I realize that a person who lives in the society that we've built and doesn't have some kind of averse response to it, that's probably a more sick person, because when I see these things, and to me it's so deeply wrong, it cuts to my core. And part of starting this organization is that I can't imagine, I don't want to live in a world that looks like the one we built. And the only way that I feel like I can be okay with my time on this earth is if I try to change what it looks like. So yeah.
It raises the vibration. Like every time somebody like connects with you on that level, it raises their vibration, and there's like a ripple effect. You know what I mean? And it's important work. I think it's, you know, you're fighting the stigma, and you're raising awareness, and you're like actually connecting with people, and they're feeling like, oh, it's okay, it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but I will say it's very in some ways the work is very lonely and traumatizing too. I think it's an irony of people going into it because I remember one of the times I was going through my depression, I was having weekly calls with a Buddhist monk, and she said, "Well, of course you're lonely. You're a truth teller. You're always going to be lonely. You have the loneliness of the truth teller. Society always wants to run from the truth." And that's kind of stuck with me a lot. I had a call with a friend yesterday, and we talked about some of the wounds that we've inflicted on each other over the years. And he said, "I've been wanting to talk to you for this forever so that we could have this. It was really beautiful." And he said, "I know, and that's why I've avoided it, because I know you're like, I knew I couldn't be friends with you without confronting my shit." And
Yeah.
and then I cried because I was like, yeah, I mean, it's funny, if you see me, I have a lot of, a lot of people know me, and sometimes I think I'm the loneliest person in the world because I see that I terrify people, and I see that people don't want to have these conversations. But I see that they're also dying not having the conversations. So it's a really
It's
interesting.
easier. I mean, it's almost easier to not have the conversations. It's like, you seek comfort and safety. And what you're suggesting is like we be open and vulnerable. And that is not comfortable for a lot of people. And, the unfortunate thing is like, if you you hide and you put this wall in front and this mask, you get to the end of your life and it's like, well, what happened to my life? And who am I? Right. And
Exactly.
who do I
Yeah.
love? Who loves me? Like there's nothing real. And so, I don't know. We work in mental health in our treatment center, and Sarah does this. She has to hold space for a lot of people, and she has to like talk about some icky things. And I know the therapists get burned out.
Yeah, of course. We treat our care workers like total shit. We prioritize all of the wrong people in our society. And then on top of that, then we expect them to, then we kind of blame them for feeling like shit after we've been shitting on them our whole life. Our society is also very gaslighting in that way.
You're
So
right. We
there's,
celebrate the lowest common denominator. Like we elevate that to be like this wonderful thing.
yeah,
And it's not, you know what I mean? It's fake and plastic and vapid, and that's what I was talking about before. Like it's a very inauthentic culture,
yep.
and I think that's got like a very negative effect on
And oh, definitely. Um, and it's so hard with the people who take care of our mental wellness because we don't celebrate the therapists. We celebrate, the plastic surgeon.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, look at this face. It's so beautiful, reconstructed. And it's like, why don't we look at the soul and see how beautiful that is reconstructed? And it's like, that's the challenge, is we don't care to look that deep at people because it is hard. It is that hard conversation, and people who know me never will say, wow, Sarah just really holds those punches in. She never speaks the truth.
No, they would say you're the queen of confrontation.
Some people do say that, actually.
Which like another testament to how fucked up our society is that they say that like it's a bad thing, right?
Right.
I mean, I think it's really funny. Don't get me wrong, I'm really badass and strong, but I'm also the softest, mushiest person you'll ever meet. But it's funny because I get this bitchy, confrontational kind of like rap, and I just think it's hilarious because I have a few friends who are like, "Oh, you're so confrontational." I'll be like, "Well, what do you mean?" And they'll be like, "Well, that person did something and you said something about it and you guys talk." So like, I'm confrontational because I will literally talk like this. I'm not raising my voice. I'm just like, "Hey, this happened. It really hurt me. I would love to like get to the bottom." And we talk, and it's usually a really beautiful thing. But in our society, what we call communication is avoidance, and what we call confrontation is communication. And so we have it all totally distorted and skewed. And I teach this class called Turning Conflict into Trust. And it's this idea of part of why I believe in what we call confrontation. I don't see that way, is that, I think that if somebody who's willing to bring conflict to you is somebody who's bringing you a gift. They're telling you that I care enough about you to. It's so easy in our culture to ghost one another, to just leave, make another friend, just totally disappear, to like not be worth somebody's time. And if somebody's coming to you with something, that says that you're worth their time. They believe in you. They care enough that they want it to work out, that they trust you enough that you could receive them without, abusing them in return. I mean, to me, it speaks volumes to the faith that they have in you and the potential they see in what you can become. And so to me, there's no greater gift than somebody bringing me a confrontation or conflict. It's to me, it's one of the purest acts of love that we can do. And I think reframing it that way can change it, because I think we are walking around these defensive, protective shells. And to me, I'm kind of, the first thing I think when I receive is like, wow, I'm so touched. I'm so moved that this person cared enough. And I think even that just really transforms the nature of the entire conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, thank
It
you for
reminds
coming.
me of, oh, Bryce, I'm interrupting you again twice.
Go ahead.
It reminds me of this Mary Oliver quote. Someone once handed me a box of darkness, and it took me years to understand that this too was a gift. And that always sticks with me, because it's like all these things that we avoid doing because it might potentially hurt somebody else's feelings. When we actually do it, it's like it's that gift. Like, wow, I was avoiding this conflict with you because I was afraid it was going to hurt your feelings. And in turn, it actually hurt your feelings by not addressing it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, okay, so this box of darkness is not actually this, like, it's a gift too. That is also a gift to us. And yeah, so I really like how you phrase that. And I'm going to take out this, take with me this truth teller quote. That was a really good one.
Yeah. So there was a point in my recovery, and I started to realize that, like, most of the world talks about what's going on, like the president and what they saw on Facebook, and it's all bullshit. But like in recovery, in early recovery, when I was like getting sober, I was encouraged to talk about what's really going on. Like, not what's going on, what's really going on, right? And that's what you're doing. And it's important. And I applaud you. And I thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
There was something that really, there were a lot of things that I would say kind of saved me. And by the way, if you guys see me doing this weird hand thing, I kind of forget. In my workshops, this is like, there we go. There's my hand. Where is it? There you go. I kind of like, it's kind of a way of like silent clapping. So sorry if it was distracting you and I didn't explain it earlier on. But this is also why I hate so much of our self-help culture, because it grossly oversimplifies things. Because I've had so many different things save me at different points, and then I would go back down and come up. But one of the really pivotal things I came across was, it's called A Shaman's View of Mental Illness. And he was talking about this idea that in the West, we view mental illness as, an individual problem. And there's a person and something is wrong with them, and they need to be fixed so that they can come back and be this productive member of society. And that was really how I viewed myself. I thought that I was a problem that needed fixing, and that my highest aspirations because of my mental illness was that, the most I could hope for was that people would tolerate me, like not mind being around me. That was my highest aspiration. And he said, in our culture, he said people with mental illness, some things we know about them is that they're disproportionately really highly intelligent. They're very sensitive. And he said, to us, those are amazing qualities. And we view these people as having a gift of understanding and empathy. And we view them as leaders in our community, and that they can show us where we're not, ways in which our society is failing one another, and ways in which we can be better and we can show up for one another more. So we put these people on a pedestal. And I just remember sitting and just sobbing my fucking eyes out, because now it's so obvious that I'm a leader. It's like you're around me for a second and it's like I ooze it, but before that, I just thought, oh, I'm mentally ill, I'm a piece of shit. I never in a million years could have imagined that I would be doing even a fraction what I'm doing now, because I thought it was this, crippling disability essentially, and really it was that I have something to fucking say, and it's real and it matters. And when somebody treats me as valid and legitimate, then I wake the fuck up, and I'm a really powerful force to be reckoned with. And I can't even imagine how many people are out there. I think probably a lot of the most beautiful people, the people that we could be learning the most from, and we should be learning the most from, like, we elevate all these narcissistic piece of shit leaders, right? And meanwhile, we have these sensitive, beautiful people that we are totally harming and re-traumatizing every day by making them feel crazy. And just imagine if we flip that around and we said, no, hey, you sensitive person, you person that can't get out of bed because you see injustice and you're not okay with it, we want you to take the mantle. I can't even imagine what our world would look like. So yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Sasha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. This
You're
was
welcome.
great.
You're awesome. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so what do we got next week? Do you know, Lindsay?
Yeah, we have, I think you're very excited for this one too, Bryce. David McLaughlin
No. Wait, no, that's the following week.
Is that the following week?
Yeah. You don't know who's next week. Next week is Greg Maloney. He's a bodybuilder and is a fitness trainer.
That's
and
right.
He's a recovery guy, and he kind of got sober through like the courts, and I really want to touch on that, like how you don't have to go to treatment, you don't have to do all these things. Like sometimes the judge can or prison or whatever it is, like that kind of a bottom can really affect somebody to get and stay sober. And I'm hoping he'll talk about that and
Love that.
and promote his business. I mean, he's like in tremendous shape. He's ripped, and I'm sure it plays a huge part in his recovery.
Love it. I can't wait.
Sarah, thank you.
Sarah, you're awesome,
thank
as
you.
always. All right, everyone. Have a great week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you here next week at 6:30.
See ya.